Last weekend, a teenager in Wisconsin died in an accident at a sawmill. While we don't have official confirmation that he was in fact an employee at the sawmill, US Department of Labor is investigating the case as a potential child labor violation. Now, what we do know is that the teenager was much too young to even legally enter that sawmill, let alone work in it. But Wisconsin happens to be just one of many states that is considering rolling back their child labor laws. Other states, like Arkansas, for instance, already have. But come on, what's more American than endangering young children or people in general for the sake of big business and their profits? The statistics on child labor in this country are horrifying. But before we get into those numbers, we have to get into the details regarding the tragedy that occurred in Wisconsin. So last Thursday, the Florence County Sheriff's Office received a call about an unresponsive 16-year-old at the Florence Hardwood Logging Company. He was sent to a hospital, but tragically and unfortunately passed away from his injuries on Saturday. A GoFundMe post set up for the family said the rural community in Florence is in absolute shock. Now, the GoFundMe states that the teenager, whose name was Michael Scholes, was in fact working at Florence Hardwood. This deeply sad incident never should have happened. Wisconsin law not only forbids children from working at a sawmill, but according to Wisconsin Public Radio, kids under the age of 18 aren't even allowed to enter a sawmill building. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, also known as OSHA, is now investigating the incident, and they've made a referral to the US Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division for possible child labor violations. But look, this is far from the only child labor violation in the state of Wisconsin. I mean, if we were to take a step back and look at child labor violations across the country, the statistics would be even worse. But for the sake of this story, let's focus on Wisconsin. So Wisconsin state officials say child labor complaints more than quadrupled from 2018 to 2022. The Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development's Equal Rights Division received 18 minor employment complaints in 2018 and 86 complaints last year. And that's according to Jennifer Sereno, who's the department's communications director. Now, those numbers are similar to what we've seen on a national level. The US Labor Department states that from 2018 to 2022, cases of children being illegally employed have risen by a whopping 69%. So what is Wisconsin? What are the lawmakers there doing about this crisis? Well, their state politicians are working hard to further loosen child labor laws. 14-year-olds in Wisconsin could serve alcohol to seated customers in bars and restaurants under a bill circulated for co-sponsors on May 1st by a pair of Republican state lawmakers. In Wisconsin, you have to be 18 to serve alcohol to sitting customers, but that bill would lower the age to 14. So you'd have 14-year-olds serving alcohol to adults. I don't know, I just feel like that might not be a good idea. However, that bill would not change the age at which workers are allowed to serve alcohol at a bar. So there is a small caveat there. Now, if the proposal passes, Wisconsin would have the lowest age limit for workers allowed to serve alcohol, according to the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. And the bill sponsors said their idea creates a simple solution to the state's workforce shortage problems in the food and beverage industry. You know, rather than actually addressing why there's a shortage in that industry in the state of Wisconsin, maybe due to low wages, poor working conditions, they've just decided to loosen the laws to allow literal 14-year-olds to serve alcohol. Great. And yeah, the bill isn't a massive change to Wisconsin labor law, but it's unlikely that it will be, and it's unlikely that it'll be passed, because the Democratic governor, Tony Evers, would need to sign it. And his spokesperson publicly mocked the bill after it was unveiled. Also, the bill is just one of many changes to child labor law that has been proposed or passed throughout the country It's worth looking into that as well. So in the past 2 years, at least 14 states have introduced bills to erode child labor standards. 11 states introduced bills in 2023 alone. Now, 8 have been signed into law so far. The right-wing think tanks, like the Foundation for Government Accountability, which has ties to right-wing villains like Ed Yulin and Leonard Leo, have been pretty instrumental in getting these bills created and passed. Thanks to the efforts of the ultra-wealthy, our country has been completely taken over by the backwards ideology that corporate profits are more important than human life. We've all felt the pain of inflation over the past few years. That was largely driven by corporations who saw the change to price, who saw this as a chance to price gouge us, even if supply chain issues or shortages had no impact on their businesses whatsoever. Now, corporations have decided that the well-being of literal children is less important than the chance to make more money this quarter than they did last quarter. But we can fight back against these attacks on ourselves and our kids. This year in Virginia, for instance, a group of teenagers mobilized against a bill that would have slashed the state's minimum wage by $3 an hour for any workers under the age of 18. So let's pause for a second. That's the other thing I really want to highlight here. So it's not just about closing a gap because there's a worker shortage. It's about what younger workers, what underage workers might be willing to put up with that older workers, adult workers might not be willing to put up with. Lower wages, poor working conditions. It's real easy to take advantage of people who are underage. And that is something that we should be deeply concerned about as dozens of states move to loosen their child labor laws. Now, thanks to their efforts, the proposed bill never made it to the House floor for a vote. The right wing is highly mobilized and effective at getting their agenda passed, but their efforts are driven by a tiny group of rich and powerful people. The left needs to remember that we have the people on our side. And when we learn how to fight together for the sake of all of our common interests, we can win. And I would venture to say that's something that we should all keep in mind as we move forward with various issues. Do we engage in ridiculous infighting that disempowers any movement that we're trying to push? Or do we actually fight together in order to protect the workplace conditions, the economic interests, and honestly, the overall livelihoods of our fellow Americans? Just something to think about as we move forward.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.